As you know, this event we've teamed up with the creatives at Zendesk. We've got Fiona and Anna with us, and they're going to be taking us through a workshop that is designed to level up your remote facilitation and collaboration techniques. And it seems pretty fun, actually. Seeing a little bit of the board, have a little bit of a squeeze in there. It's very colorful, very engaging. I'm liking it. So during the session, Fiona and Anna will be working through some example scenarios and walk you through a collection of templates and frameworks that you get to take home with you. So you don't need those notepads. So we're going to talk about stakeholder identification, diverge-then-converge thinking, as well as how to ensure the outcomes are actionable. So let me move through the board. It just takes a little while, doesn't it? Because it doesn't really like me. We're doing this all very, very remotely. Hold on, I'll try one more time. Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. So one more. Yeah, okay. Please bear with me as we have technical slow difficulties. So acknowledgement of country. On behalf of LTUX Melbourne, I acknowledge that although we are scattered throughout Melbourne and beyond, we've got people in Singapore tonight, we are all on traditional land across Australia. Many of us will be on the lands of the Woi Wurrung and Bun Wurrung language groups of the Greater South Central and Eastern Kulin nations. I pay respects to their elders, past, present, and importantly, the emerging leaders, as well as any other First Nations people present today. The heart of the LTUX community is driven by the desire to connect and build something together, be it shared knowledge, shared inspiration, shared networks. Whether it's in person or from afar, the First Peoples of this country have also got this desire to connect. It's seen and felt throughout their spiritual relationship with Mother Earth, the way that they pass on their knowledge through storytelling, and their efforts to communicate as far using smoke signals. So as we connect tonight, let us remember that there is so much that we can learn from the communities around us, especially those that have been here before us. So that slide just like to move on its own without anybody even touching it. That's how it's doing its own thing. But who are we? Who is LTUX? We are a global meetup group that started in Manchester in the UK in 2013. The Melbourne chapter started in 2014. The current co-organisers are myself, I'm Mon, Eva, who you can see below me, I think, potentially, Anshel, and Berlin, so who are waving right now. So our purpose is to provide a platform for women identifying and non-binary folks to speak, facilitate, and share their knowledge. We are committed to creating a safe and inclusive space for all folks in the UX community. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind, and we ask that by attending our events, you'll observe our code of conduct, which I will attempt to show you now. Yay, it worked. Fabulous. Okay, we're on a roll now. So please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking. Sessions will be recorded, as we mentioned before, but please feel free to turn off your video if you're not comfortable, and then the breakout rooms, pop it back on if you'd like, because they're not going to be recorded. No pressure at all. So the code of conduct can be found at this link. And if you have any questions, can you please pop them in the Miro board in the parking lot? If you see a question you like, make sure that you vote for it as well, because the highly voted on questions will be responded to the quickest. So tonight's event is proudly sponsored by Zendesk. Built upon a simple idea, make customer service software that's easy to use and accessible to everyone. Zendesk have expanded on that idea, and they now offer a growing family of products. Their products are easy to use and implement. I'm sure a lot of us have seen them used across different platforms. They give organizations the flexibility to move quickly, focus on innovation, and scale with their growth. So the best customer experiences are built with Zendesk, and if you'd like to learn more, check them out at zendesk.com. So let's meet the wonderful Zendesk creatives behind tonight's workshop. We are an international event tonight. We have Anna, who is a UX research manager at Zendesk based in Singapore. So lovely and warm there in Singapore, I'm assuming right now, compared to how cold it is in Melbourne. So Anna is passionate about research and taking a pragmatic approach to delivering successful results. She specializes in international research, experimental research methods, growing research as a function, and research processes for scaling. And Fiona is a senior product designer at Zendesk in Melbourne. With a background in both digital agency and SaaS product design, Fiona is happiest when helping the team bridge those gaps between the intersection between design and development phase. And outside of work, Fiona loves, is it bingsu? It's a frozen dessert, I think. Yes?
Frozen dessert.
Even frozen dessert. You also love yoga and glamping with your 3-year-old son. What is your 3-year-old's name?
Max.
Max. Amazing. Amazing. Well, I'll hand the virtual mic over to you, Fiona.
Oh, thank you. So I'll bring control back. I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. So we'll be taking you through a whirlwind of how we do interactive workshops at Zendesk, how we collaborate across offices, how we work with our customers using tools like Miro and Zoom. So thanks for the lovely introduction, Mon. So I'm Anna, UX Research Manager. I'm based in Singapore, and we're also joined by Fiona.
Yeah, and I'm the senior product designer. Like many of you here this evening, I'm Melbourne-based. And since joining Zendesk 3 years ago, I've been a part of the Antibot team who focuses on building great chatbot and automation experience at Zendesk. Now, as we've alluded to a little bit earlier, today's session will be highly interactive. So I'm screen sharing at the moment. So this is the Miro board that we'll be presenting and working directly in this evening. Feel free to participate as much or as little as you're comfortable with. So it's okay to stay back and just absorb it all in. And because today's meant to be quite interactive, we do want to know about all of you as well. So yeah, if you haven't done so already, please do pop in your details. We want to know about who you are, what you do, and what is it that you love about working remotely. So in keeping with the theme today. So that in mind,
yeah, so, oh, sorry, Fiona, thanks for that. So we're very curious to know if you've ever heard of Zendesk, and we don't mind either way, but we're very curious to know. So if you see at the bottom of your Zoom, there's a button called reactions with a smiley face. If you hit that, you can actually hit the yes or the no. So yeah, how about sharing with us whether you have heard of Zendesk or not? So I'll be clicking the tick. Okay, we have a couple of yeses coming through. What have we got here? One no, a couple of no's, a couple of thumbs up.
Seems like a mix here we've got.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of people have heard about Zendesk, which is really nice to hear and quite refreshing. Sometimes we have to go into quite a bit of depth. So you'll see as we go through the sessions that we'll be using interactive portions, and we'll kind of be demonstrating it so that you learn about these features and things and think about how you might apply it in your work environment. So I'm going to take off my yes. And so here's a little bit about Zendesk. If you haven't heard of us, you actually might have experienced the Zendesk experience without even realizing it. So Zendesk, as Mon explained, we work on customer service and customer support. We're all about building relationships between the business and the customer. But quite often, for example, an email might be sent to a business, or a phone call might be made, or you might even receive a message from a business. They could be powered by Zendesk, but you wouldn't know about it per se. So just an interesting fact. And also a quick thing to mention that we're actively hiring and we're growing in Australia. So please check out our careers page, jobs.zendesk.com. We've got a few UX research roles that we're hiring in Australia and a few design roles. So go and check it out and apply if you're interested.
Cool. Thanks for the intro, Anna. So I want to touch on a little bit about why you're here this evening. And thank you all for agreeing to commit to spending this Wednesday evening with us. But what is it really in this session for you? So today's all about three things. So firstly, it's about how, as a design practitioner, we can stay empathic, effective, and effective, even when you're not in the same room as the people who will be building your design. So that's your team, your internal stakeholders, also the people who you are designing the experience for. So the tips that we'll talk about today can also be applied to external situations where you're talking to customers. You'll be able to use these creative facilitation techniques to elicit feedback and have really productive discussion with your customers. And we also want this to be like really quite a different, like not just be another Zoom meeting. So there's a lot of interactive components that we've loaded up into today's session. There will be a lot of chance to take notes, to put into practice what you've learned today. So as Mon mentioned earlier, no need to take notes, just sit back and absorb it all, and we'll take you through all of it. So when we look at the breadth of like where you can apply facilitation technique, regardless of where you're at in that UX spectrum, I think it's actually really important to polish your communication and facilitation skill. It's becoming one of those traits that is just expected from a design practitioner. Your product partner, your engineering partner look to us for this sort of like skill set that we bring to the team. So the techniques that we'll talk about today is things that you can use on really quite a wide range of meetings and workshops, whether they're internal or external, whether you are in the early part of the double diamond process where you're going through discovery and you're trying to diversify the thinking as much as possible, to the sort of like the delivery end where you're trying to align and get the team into the same spot. So recapping back from the benefits from a really good session, a session that's just not another Zoom meeting, the session that really engages stakeholder and, as we say, spark joy. If you bring your stakeholders on a really good journey and they really enjoy and really are able to immerse themselves in the process, you're creating a better chance for alignment, better relationship, better reports built with various stakeholders that needs to be involved in your process. If you're doing this externally, because you're in the UX research role or as a part of your role, you talk to customers a lot, this is like the right session to be in because you learn about how to gather insights and having those insights shape your team's priorities and roadmaps. Because we all know that it is really important to have feedback and validation of ideas and concepts as you go. And lastly, better decisions are always made when the decision maker are prepared to have their viewpoint challenged. So when they're not sitting high on a pedestal, but they're actively increasing the diversity of perspective.
So we've got another interactive portion. I'm going to launch a poll, and we would love to know about everyone's experience with running workshops, whether they're with or customers or internally. So I'm going to launch the poll and then we can all take a look at the results. So we've got two questions here. Have you done any remote workshops before? And the second one is, who have you done them with? So let's see what results are coming through.
So as the results are coming through, I'll just point out that if you have access to Zoom in your workplace, this is a really great trick that you can use because it doesn't take the audience away. They stay in the Zoom meeting and the poll, everything's done in the same location.
I'll give it a few more seconds as all the votes are coming in. But it's very interesting. I'm going to show it shortly, but so far we've got people who've run a few, some who've never, and some a lot. And then in terms of who it's been done with, we've got some people, a lot, mostly with internal actually, and then some with customers and some with others or haven't done them before, which is very, very interesting. So I'm going to end the poll and then you can take a look. So I think you can see on your screen now. So what you can do is actually turn around and show people how they voted or what was the results. A really great way if there's a lot of topics that you want to use a way to decide on what to focus on. I've seen this done by other facilitators before. So we've got a few people who have run remote workshops, and to recap, mostly with internal stakeholders.
The customers one seems like a close second runner-up.
Yes. So, okay, today's scenario. So as mentioned in the description of the event, today's going to be a highly interactive event. Don't worry, there's no right or wrong answers. And we've picked a non-Zendesk situation. So hopefully there's not Aldi people here, but the situation is this. Aldi, and Aldi is a sort of a low-cost supermarket or like fixed amount of stock that they have, wants to become more digital and increase profit and competitive advantage. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the scenario as if we're working at LD, and we might be needing to run these internal and maybe even later on external workshops. So as mentioned by Fiona at the start, this session today, we're going to run you through the prep, the actual running of the session, and then the after, what to do after you've run your interactive workshop and collaboration session. So we'll be running through first about how to plan and prepare, and that's where you're best spending your time actually. That's where you should be really thinking about framing it, who should be in the room, aligning everyone, making sure that it's very clear and all the tools and documents are ready to be used. So the first thing about before the session is identification of the stakeholders and then the planning of the activity. And so you want to make sure that the right stakeholders are in the right room at the right time. So the first thing that we'll be doing is talking about identifying the topic and your stakeholders. So thinking about stakeholders, just briefly, we'll be thinking about them in two ways. One is if they need to be highly engaged and really involved. Maybe they're making a decision based on what you're planning to do or the thing that you need to get alignment on, or they may need to be informed where they just need to be updated, but there's no major impact to their work. Then the second part is about brainstorming, which we'll do together today, about what thing that you might need to focus on. Sometimes lots of people in the room may have different things or a different slant when it comes to approach of a problem. So we'll be running through that scenario today. The idea is that you want the more ideas, the better, but then the idea after that is to vote and converge on one topic. So you want to get alignment through everyone having some kind of voting capability and being able to do it in a time box period so that it's a not a forced decision, but a quickly made decision by the time constraint. So here's an example of when we think about stakeholders, as I mentioned before, we think about direct, who to include, and indirect, who needs to be informed. And I won't give away any hints, but we will be working on this in our breakout rooms shortly.
And following the activity that Anna has just mentioned, here's a sample template on how you might structure an activity that will actually give voice to all of your workshop participants equally. So a very typical structure to this section is you'll start off by having all of the individual working silently, just writing out their thoughts on a piece of Post-it notes. This Post-it notes function in Miro as well, but you could do this like in person as well. And depending on the size of the group and whether it's appropriate or not in your setting, you might also want to or be able to color code the Post-it notes if you need it for identification. And once as your participants are putting up and writing on their thoughts, it might actually be a good idea for you to perform some affinity mapping. So starting to group similar topics together, so it's a little bit easier for everyone to process the information. And lastly, the important part, which is the voting, if you're distributing an equal amount of votes, or in this case, we usually use a dot sticker in person or just a circle in Miro. So you'll distribute that to all of the participants and give equal amount for all of them so that the most important information will naturally just bubble up to the top. I've got here an example. This is an abstracted version of how the session usually progresses. So there's no words on any of the Post-its here, but each cluster or each grouping here would be representing a topic, a theme, or a theory. When, if it's appropriate for your session, you could actually open up the type of voting that people can do as well. So when they're voting on a cluster rather than an individual idea. That's something that we've employed in the past as well. So now we will be breaking out into our breakout session. So Anna and I will take on each group and we'll perform the two sets of activities that we've just described. The time that we spend in the breakout room will be time boxed because we do want to keep the evening on track. So I'll just quickly take everyone through the two sets of activity. So first of all, we'll spend about 5 minutes going through the stakeholder identification part. So put your thinking hats on and let's brainstorm on the type of direct and indirect stakeholder who might be involved if Aldi were to go digital and they want to compete with the e-commerce businesses. So here's the board that my team will be working on. Anna will have a separate board for her group, and we'll be time boxing it to 5 minutes and moving on to topic identification as the second part. So in the topic identification part, again, we'll work silently for the first 5 minutes. Everyone will just be generating as much topic, challenges, or open questions that might be relevant again to the topic of Aldi supermarket trying to enter digital space. And I just want to point out that this is a fictional, obviously a fictional scenario. So there's no right or wrong answer, just have fun with it and have a play with it. So again, there's two boards here. So I've got one set up for the group that I will be taking through, and Anna's got another one.
Okay, is everyone ready? I'll be moving everybody into their relevant breakout rooms. Please message us in the chat if there's any issues. Okay, here we go. Welcome back. I think we'll just be waiting for the other room to come back too.
I'll just reshare my screen so we can take a look at what people's come up with. Ooh, sounds like there's quite a bit of engineering. Wow, we have quite a range here.
Yeah, it looks like there's some consistency in what people define as include, meaning direct, and then also indirect to mean inform.
It's also a great activity to expose any, I guess, like mismatching understanding. So we've got people who put suppliers in indirect versus suppliers in direct, or people to be included. So a really great way to bubble up anything that should warrant more discussion with your team as you're doing this.
So let's quickly just recap what the second activity is and then what people can expect.
Sounds good. Let me just come through to the second activity. So the next thing that we'll be doing is the topic identification. We'll have a longer time in this session. So we'll silently be generating, brainstorming on topics individually and putting them up. And we'll use, after that 5 minutes, we'll use the last 5 minutes for voting. So everyone gets 3 dots that they can put on the post-it notes that they think are most important or most interesting.
Okay, I'm going to open the room. This one will be a very quick exercise again. So 5 minutes of what is the challenge around making Aldi more digital, and then we'll vote on which one we might focus on if we were the team to work on it. Okay, opening the room now. Fiona, your room is really, your board is super organized.
I'm gonna take a peek at yours one. Oh, I had help, like everyone was helping me.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, I outsourced the job.
Very good. Yeah, I like how you've sort of put topics for each of the sections so that people could vote for the overall topics.
Oh, your room had the same problem as us, where the dots were sinking behind the post-it notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing I did was copy and paste them so that the last thing, and so they would hopefully go on the top.
Oh, there you go. I was giving out pro tips that you can press function up arrow.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. That is really cool. So now that we have the topics, shall we talk about how we would turn them into like a statement that the team can get alignment around? What do you think?
That's a really good idea. So once you've had those topics bubble up, it's like, what's next? It's really important for you to be able to articulate and have a way of framing the problem statement. So in the exercise that we've gone through, you and your team have bubble up and now know like what is the challenge that you want to put forward to the team. And here's a handy formula that you can use. It's called the how might we statement. And it goes like this. So how might we do something for a particular target audience so that they can reach a goal or achieve a really desirable outcome or result? Now, it's important when you're employing this. So something that to keep in mind all the time when you're writing how might we statement is you should be describing the problem. So at all costs, refrain from defining the solution. There's been some recent controversies, so you might have, if you stay up to date, we're reading UX blogs and like just what people are saying in the community. There's been some recent controversy and criticism on this how might we prompt. It's always very challenging when you're working in a really complex problem space and you're trying to boil it all down. It feels very reductive, like, you're boiling it all down to a single sentence. And to that, I would say that the way you can handle this is by being really transparent with your team and really just frame it as a starting point. So this how might we statement will never do justice to the level of complexity of the problem space that your team is facing, but it's really still valuable to have a single starting point for your team when they're embarking on the journey. With that in mind, let's look at a couple of examples. So we'll spend a few minutes just reading through this and look at what makes a good how might we statement. In the example that I've got here on the top, I've got a statement that what we will call or consider an unclear statement. Can everyone just have a think around why this is a bad statement? So I'll read it up. Increase usage of new feature by redesigning the what's new section. What's the problem with this statement here? So I'll give up the answer. This is this statement. Oh, I think we've got people popping answers through chat as well. Yes, very vague, but also it's prescribing the solution. So this statement has been framed with in mind that the team is going to redesign the what's new section. So immediately it's stopping the team from diverging before they're converging. You went into it straight away with a converging mindset. The statement is also lacking in details about the person that we're actually designing the experience for. And I can venture guess as to why we're trying to increase usage in the first place. It's probably something to do with profit and all that stuff, but it's all very unclear about it. And when I had this up on the screen previously, you can see the color coding here. So that's the formula. And that's actually what made the second statement a better statement. We can go back to the formula and break it down, and then we'll see the pattern here. So here's a how might we, followed by the desire to make the experience easy and intuitive. So again, we're describing like what the outcome that we want without prescribing how we're going to get there. We're also being explicit about the people that we're designing for. So we know that we're designing the experience for existing customer. We know that this is not an exercise to increase adoption. We're focusing on existing customers who we have currently. And we did also describe what is the outcome for them, so they will be more efficient in their workflow. So now that we talk about how might we a little bit, it's time for a little pop quiz. So if you want to participate in this next exercise, please have a look in your Zoom control. So there should be a menu called Annotate. And once you've selected it, you should get a little floating bar. So like the one that we've shown below here. And that should give you access to the stamping tool. This is a really fun tool that I love to use. So thanks to Anna for showing me this tool. So if anyone have got their stamp tool ready, feel free to take it for a test run. We can clear the screen before we actually attempt the exercise. Oh, there you go. Veronica's found the stamp. Someone found the annotation tool as well. Cool. So I hope all of you have the stamp ready. I'll just clear the screen before we move on to the next slide. All right, so here's the challenge. So I've got 3 statements here. I would like to get everyone to drop their stamp to indicate which statement do you think is clear. Which one do you think is a good statement? So we've got 3 statements here. The first one is, how might we make checking out easy? How might we improve the checkout process for our customers so they can buy what they need without a problem? That seems to be the one that's getting the stamp of approval, I should say. So everyone's, there's a few has picked the last one. How might we redesign the checkout cart to improve the checkout success rate? Wow, everyone seems to be really converging on the second statement, which makes me really happy because it means that you're all paying attention. So let's revisit the example, and we've got the color coding here to look at how that the formula that we've talked about. So the first statement here really has described a goal. We know that we want to make checkout a bit easier, but it's lacking in a couple of details. As you can see, like the orange bit and the green bits is not in there. It's not describing who we're designing the experience for, also like what is the actual impact on their experience. And I'm glad to say that everyone's put their stamp on the second statement, which has all the crucial elements. So we have a process for the service that's been performed. We've also described the target audience, so our customer, as well as the desired outcome. What's wrong with the last statement? It's committed the cardinal sin of how might we statement, which is describing the solution. So it's something to always keep in mind when you're writing, trying to write out a clear how might we statement. So with that in mind, I'll clear the screen now and I'll pass it on to Anna to give us a deep dive on how do we do this with an external audience.
Yes, thanks, Fiona. So we talked about sort of how we might use these techniques internally, and we thought we would just quickly highlight, if you were to do the same with customers, what would you need to consider working with external people? So I'm not sure if you've heard of the double diamond. Well, we have our own version, which is the triple diamond at Zendesk. So we have 3 diamonds. The first 2 really focus on what we would call that discovery phase. So there's a lot of diverge and converge. Then we have the development phase, and then validation happening towards the end. So when we think about when to apply what method, we have to think about which phase are we in this triple diamond, and what would be the most appropriate things you want to ask, the method to use, and to who to have involved. So with that in mind, we have, an easy way to think about it, or a simplified way to think about discovery versus validation. So when we think about discovery, we think about it in terms of the work is early in its stage, it's very vague. Maybe the problem statement or area is not very well defined. There's a lot of opportunity for change. Maybe there's opportunity for change in the product or feature or focus. It's a relatively unknown space versus something that's very well defined. And in the discovery phase, you tend to be focusing on the why. Why is this a problem? Why do people need it? Let's go through validation. So validation may be later in stage. The problem statement or the problem area would be clear, probably well defined. You are likely to use this phase to confirm, to just make sure that you're on the right track and potentially refine it. The problem is well defined, and maybe you're looking at a how or a what, like how do people use the thing that we've come up with? How does this solve people's needs? How might they use the thing, or what might they do? And so that's the validation phase. So when we think about like the stage and the goal and the approach, they all have some impact, and therefore you can choose whether to use one way or another. So as I mentioned, you use the double diamond or triple diamond to figure out what stage you're at. Are you diverging, converging? Is it being built already? What's the goal of the team? Like, do you need confirmation that you're on the right track, or do you need help with just even finding out what's the problem space and how you might approach it? And then the approach altogether, like what is the right method to use? So with like that, we think about these in potentially 2 ways. One is a group, a little bit like what we've done so far, and then the other is one-on-one. So I'll quickly cover off each. A group is really good for gathering a lot of ideas, sky's the limit. Co-creation, maybe you want to have your customers create something with you that might solve their problem, like demonstrate what the problem is. They might be able to have this very free-flowing, unstructured conversation because there's a lot of people involved. And also it could be good for building consensus. Let's say you have people inside an organization external to you that may not have consensus on their side. Then if you think about one-on-one, it's really good for things like in-depth discussion, observing people use something. And the other one to consider is if it's a sensitive topic. Potentially, maybe you're asking something that there's a hierarchy in the organization or something that people may not want their colleagues or people in the same organization to know.
I think we're at the sort of like the halfway point. So just a quick reminder, if you have any questions or anything you would like to discuss, please remember to put it in the parking lot. So we have a Miro parking lot set up for this. And now that we've covered all of the prep that could go into preparing for a session, let's talk about the actual session itself. So in this segment here, we'll be talking about how you might kick off a session really well, warm up your participants with killer icebreaker activity. And after the activity and the discussion that you'll have during the session, we'll also highlight a couple of things that you should be looking out for in the group setting. An agenda is really a really important part of the context setting. So I've got here an example of just a standard template that we use day in and out at Zendesk. And you'll notice that there's the time frame and also the different segments there. So generally, this is something that we will try to circulate actually ahead of the meeting, so everyone knows what the overall structure is. And having this understanding upfront is also really handy when you want to keep the session on track. And speaking of icebreaker activities, similar to the one we've done earlier, you may want to think about introducing this, especially in the group setting when the audience may not be comfortable with each other, or they may not have previous relationship with this person. It might be the very first time they've worked with this person in that setting. So bear in mind that the example that we have here, so things like favorite food, what's on top of mind, etc., they're all just examples. So you do need to adjust this depending, so exercise your judgment when you're using it for your own workshop, because it may not be appropriate for the culture or the background, the theme, and also the seniority of like the people who's participating in your event. I've got here an example of an icebreaker activity that was actually performed by Anna on a research project last year. So one thing I want to call out about this sort of icebreaker activity is this is actually a really good thing that you can do if you want to make sure that everyone on the call have their details captured. So one thing that we found at Zendesk is when we're on the call with customers, quite often you'll have like a meeting room that's dialing into your call. And on that call, there will be like 5 customers, but they're all like huddling over a screen and sharing the same Zoom account. So it can get a little bit tricky trying to capture everyone's name and what their role is and like what's off their mind, what they're thinking about. So this is a really good sneaky way to make sure that, like, you know, to get the logistics part up and over with. And also, I like that this really helps with the quieter type. So if you have like really quiet people, like they can get their, they can have their concerns heard. So yeah, like this is the underlying template that we have, and this is the same template that we've been using at the start of the session as well. So thanks to everyone who's filled it in. And it seems like we have quite a range of people here. So we have, I guess, lecturer, we have product designer, but also people who's just graduated as well. So I hope you all find something interesting in this session this evening. I want to talk a little bit about one-on-one setting as well, because a lot of what we do today is generally sort of like more geared towards group setting. But on a one-to-one setting, there's more sort of like focus on the individual, and there's more time as well. So you may kind of like be able to dig a little bit deeper with your icebreaker activity as an example, like tailor it more to that person. Although one thing to keep in mind with icebreaker, it should be something that makes the person comfortable. So think about prompts or topics that people can just like talk about without needing to do homework, without needing to prep themselves. You really, like, the goal here when you're using an icebreaker activity is just to make people feel comfortable talking to you.
Thanks, Fiona. So I'm going to be talking about how to run the session after you've done the icebreaker. And what are some considerations. So we've got a treat for you. So we are going to run through a role play, but let's talk about the different roles that people should have in the meeting. So essentially everyone who attends, especially if they're from the same organization or same team, should really have a role or a purpose or a thing that they need to look out for or be responsible for. So here's 4 examples of things to look out for. One is like having a facilitator or somebody to make sure that everyone has something to say or feels comfortable. And a way to help with this is, as we use the Miro board to elicit feedback and thoughts and ideas, we use not only like videos and like verbal, but we also use the like sticky notes to help people with that. So there's that. We keep an eye on like having somebody to keep an eye on the time and take notes. So as Fiona mentioned, we're sort of at the 7:15 mark now. So keeping an eye on the time, then like testing out the tools in advance maybe, or even like just a few minutes beforehand. And then it's always helpful to have somebody to keep an eye on that goal, whatever that challenge statement is, or that how might we, and bring the group back to that so that they focus and they don't go off topic. So we've got this role-playing scenario that we're going to run through, and we've got some volunteers from the Zendesk side who are going to help us. So the scenario is that we've got this situation, how might we offer customized cocktails from Aldi? So I'm going to be the facilitator, and then we've got a few people who are going to play different types of participants. And we're going to do that for a few minutes. Then we'll talk about how I handled it, like what techniques I used, and then like what things could you take away from that and apply when you're handling a group of different stakeholders or attendees who might have different ways of communicating. So we've got Fiona, Debbie, and Raywin who's going to be joining us.
Cool, I'll kick it off then. Hi team, what if we make it so that the customer can just add ice to their favorite mixer? So we'll be supplying the pre-mix spirit, but you can make it your own, customize it for your own. I mean, who doesn't like being able to add their own twist to a classic?
Oh, you know, I really love the idea of customization. The other day I went for like a leather workshop to customize the gift for my friends, and they had so many different options. You know, they have like leather wallets, key holders, card holders, and I was having a really hard time deciding what to get.
They should make it really simple so they can customize it, like they can make it like their own drink with the base mixer. So yeah,
okay.
Like let's go with classic cocktail.
Okay, so far we have 2 things that are happening. So Fiona, you've talked about like this ice factor. How about we note that down on a sticky note so that we can come back to that? And I think Raywin, I like where you're heading with this kind of customized, but then it's going towards the leather, you know, goods and top, you know, wallets and things. How about we bring it back to like or I think maybe it was you were talking about drinks, but how about we bring it back to like the customized cocktails for Aldi? And then we haven't heard from Debbie. What are your thoughts about these customized cocktails? Have you got any ideas?
Yeah, well, maybe we could theme them.
Okay, that's good. Tell me more about the theming.
Well, maybe it could like align with a marketing campaign that we've got on at the time.
Okay, that sounds really good. Okay, so we've got this like theming and marketing campaign. I hope somebody is writing that down. So we've got the ICE, we've got the theming marketing campaign, we've got the customization similar to other industries. Maybe we could look at them for references. What else, team? What else might we do to offer these customized cocktails from Aldi?
Yeah, I really think the team should focus on making it like really easy for customers to like just add really simple ingredient, and we take care of like all of the basic drink, like the basic mix. Yeah, I think we could go like really simple, and Debbie's idea, I think, is a great one to tie it into like a theme.
I like that. What are your thoughts, Raywin and Debbie?
When you said ingredients, the first thing I thought of was like the olives I saw at Aldi the other day. I saw that they were on sale, and I thought, oh, maybe it would be good to sort of get them the next time, you know, when I have friends over, we would have some drinks at my place, and maybe like, yeah, this might be something that can think about when you're looking at customized cocktails.
So like drinks, accessories, or compliments. I suggest we put that in the parking lot. That sounds like an interesting topic we could explore further as well. What about you, Debbie?
Yeah, I might defer to Fiona. Have you got any other ideas, Fiona?
Yeah, I really like the idea of like providing it as a base, like classic cocktail, but really like the theme that you suggested. And customers can like, I think this is a great chance to cross-sell actually as well. Like as customers buy their mixer drink base, like we could provide like the mixer like right next to the alley.
Great. I think all of the ideas so far have been very interesting, and I think we should start like writing them down and prioritizing them. So I think, shall we call time, Fiona? Let's talk about like how it was handled. So I don't know if you all saw, but we had different types of participants in our group discussion when it came to these customized cocktails for Aldi. Obviously, it's a very like far-fetched situation, but we had somebody who was a little bit quieter, who didn't say much, somebody who went a bit off topic, and then someone who had many ideas. So the good thing about using different techniques and tools, like we didn't obviously demonstrate putting it into Miro, but what you want to do is by having these different tools, you can make sure that, for example, the quieter people are involved. We have this statement that's shared on the screen, so it's easy to bring it back to that. I also mentioned using a parking lot. So if the team goes off topic, we can like set aside some time to go back to that and look at it and revisit it. Maybe it is still relevant at some point. Did you have anything else to add to that, Fiona? I think that covered kind of how we handled the situation.
Yeah, I think you are spot on, Anna. I think you covered everything there.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on to like what happens next.
Yeah, let's talk about what happens after a session. So you've had a really good session, it's all completed. And I just want to call out 2 buckets of important things to consider, because your job's not done there at the end of the session. You still need to turn insights into action and share the knowledge that you've accumulated during that progress. So let's start with turning insights into action items. So remember the goal that we've all set up for the team, that everyone voted on and everyone helped shape into a beautiful how might we statement. You should always tie it back to that and make it accountable for the team. And once you have those insight items, it's always really good to make it accountable by assigning a person next. So an owner should be assigned to each of those items. And if it's appropriate for the process that you're working with, you could also assign an estimate, so time frame next to when these things will be addressed. I also like it, like when my team call out, what are the immediate next steps, so that the whole group has visibility over like what everyone considers more important, more urgent to tackle upfront, and what can come a little bit later. And when it comes to sharing knowledge and follow up, this is particularly important if you have a lot of indirect stakeholders, so people who are not directly involved, but they still need to be updated, they still need to stay informed and know what's happening. So at Zendesk, generally when we have multi-day like events that span across multiple days, there will be a person assigned with the job of updating everyone else. So any artifacts that came up from like recording of session, photos of like, notes or like walls that we've worked on during the day. So that all will be assembled and will be written up, and we'll have a dedicated Confluence page as well as Slack post that makes it like really easy for everyone to access. And that's a really good way to get feedback, because you need to open up your work, make it really easy for people to add to it and comment on it. And lastly, remember the stakeholder mapping exercise that we've done from. Make sure that you follow up with those stakeholders, especially when they're people who you are talking to externally, because they want to have as much of a direct connection to you. So it's really important to follow up and make sure they know what to expect next.
So we have a reflection exercise, and we thought it would be nice to know like what you learn and what's one takeaway and what will you try immediately. Shall we just do it all in one room, like in this room, Fiona, and that we use I think everyone was in a different room. So there was either Fiona's room or like the room that was in my room. So whichever room you were in before, put the stickies for what was interesting, what was new, and what will you apply immediately, and any miscellaneous thoughts or reflections. And I'll set the timer for 5 minutes. So this will be a very quick exercise. So jump back into the board. I'm just going through this as people are finishing up. It's amazing to see all the different responses, and I'm so glad to see that people are ready and keen to action this as soon as they can.
I love it when like little tips that we give up is like sticking with people as well.
Yeah,
Like,
most definitely. I am super happy. And forgive us for the time, because I know that we had a lot more planned, but we're mindful that we promised that we would end, like we would time box this. So we're also trying to keep to our own principles. Right, Fiona?
yeah. Yeah.
So to recap, we've made this checklist for you, and it covers off the, the planning and preparing, how to run it, and then if you want to continue the discussion, what to do after you've done some similar workshop with either your internal team or your external team. And what we hope that you've got from this is that we've made it easier. Maybe we've broken down some things and given you some really actionable items that you could take away and apply at your work immediately. We hope that you'll get closer to customers as a result using the same method, and that you'll feel more comfortable about facilitation and doing workshops too. So we have a couple of questions in the parking lot. I took a look, and while we cover off these questions, I can read them out loud, Fiona, whilst we also have another thing that we're collecting feedback on, which is how was the session today? So if you could kindly use the annotate again, so back to the top, view options and then stamps, and then leave us some feedback about how was the session, how do you feel about the skills, and then was it all new or did you already know some of this? And then while people are filling that in, I'm going to be answering some questions. The first one is, I find with working remotely, people are easily disengaged or multitasking in meetings and workshops. Do you have any tips or strategies on how to re-engage your participants?
I think the little interactive components are actually a really good way to make sure that you pull people back in, so they're not multitasking. So the barrier of entry is really low, and with things like stamping as an example, like it's really, it's actually a little bit fun as well. So I think that's a really great way to bring people back in and make sure they're concentrating.
I think so. And I think also it's about the length of the meeting. So consider, instead of maybe having one long meeting, maybe you chunk it into different things and do it over a series of days so that it's not all taxing, because I think we all have Zoom fatigue. And I think it's about making sure that each time there's a meeting, there's a clear outcome, so people are driven by the momentum of things. So that's that one. Okay. How do you navigate when you join in the middle of the product development journey? Define or discovery is done, but it's not aligned. That's a really juicy question.
Yeah, that's a really juicy one. What do you recommend?
I think it goes back to maybe if the team is not aligned, but it's well defined, it's going back and sort of maybe doing an audit of, what was defined, why was it defined? Do we all have an agreement? Maybe you could even do a workshop on like what the interpretation of the definition is. That might be really helpful. I think it's about making sure that everyone is on the same page, especially if people are joining in and out of a project late. Yeah. What else? Okay, the next question. What about running co-design workshops with customers? How to encourage them to participate fully without them feeling embarrassed?
So I think there's ways you can do to make like customers like feel really comfortable. One of them is like having really good preparation. So making sure that you go into it like knowing like really well who the customers are. So when Anna and myself go on before we hop on a call with customers, generally we try to look at what sort of problems have they filed with us in the problem, what is the state of the account is. We take a look at their help center and just really get a good feel. I think when the customers feel like really understood, they open up a lot more easier. And some of the things that we talked about earlier in the session as well, like having icebreaker and just having like the structure in your activity so that they are easing into it. It's not immediately like hello, welcome to the call. Here's a design task that you should take on. So it's making sure that and you should always be adaptable as well. So be ready to jump in and take a little bit more if the customer is still warming up.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think, again, it's about prompting them at the start or beforehand, like what's the meeting for, what's expected of them, how to prepare, and also kind of similar to how we did the role play. You know, when I ask people to use sticky notes, it's good because for us, we find that we have different customers in different regions, and culture has an impact where the people speak out. So allowing for different types of people to participate. And I think that would really, really help. But there's also other ways. So maybe instead of just giving answers, they put screenshots or like clips of things, or they bring in their data. And so you're participating and giving insight without needing to just speak all the time as well. We have a couple of questions. Any other tools if people can't access Miro? So Fiona and I have used Google Slides before. It's a free, I mean, obviously it's not as powerful as Miro, but it's a free way that you can do kind of sticky notes and clustering and that kind of thing. So you could get inventive with using something like that, or Lucidchart, or something where I think there's even a Google free tool. I can't remember, the Jamboard, which
Jamboard, yeah. And I think Figma have released their own version of Jamboard of Miro as well. So I think we're using Miro for the session this evening, but there's really a lot of whiteboarding tool out there. So take your pick of the tool, but get to know the tool really well before the session, so you can really maximize it when you're on.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the board while people are still annotating. There's 2 more questions. So how do you do polls again in Miro? So that is a really good question. I think there is some kind of feature in there, but I am not too familiar. Do you know, Fiona?
I believe you actually have to set it up ahead of time as well, so it might not be something we can demonstrate right on this call as well.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it in Miro, but if you wanted to do a poll like what we did today, we did that in Zoom. So if you are the host of the meeting, you can actually create your own poll, and there's different like formats of questions that you can ask and then share with people. So that's that. And then how are the conversations in 101 different from group activities?
So the discussion on with one-on-one, obviously you have more sort of like an intimate settings where there's more attention, there's more I guess there's more chance to dig a little bit deeper, and it can be a little bit challenging when the person who's sitting on the other side is a little bit introverted and you're having to like draw information out of them. So there's definitely something to be mindful of when you're comparing the difference between a group setting versus a one-on-one session.
Yeah, and I think, let me have a quick look at the board. I think that's all the questions that we have. So thank you for those who submitted the questions in our parking lot.
I hope everyone gets something out of this evening, but thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us.
We really appreciate it. We hope that you have something that you can take away and apply immediately.
And did you say that there was some positions at Zendesk going? Should we recap on them?
Yes, well, that is a good point, Amon. So we definitely have some positions. I can't speak to the design ones, but I have 2 research positions in my team, Australia, in either Melbourne or remote going. So please check them out. And then we also have like the community. Did you want to mention that, or shall I, Fiona?
Yeah, so we have this community event where you can all connect with us. We update this very regularly, so there's always posts about new blog posts about how we do things at Zendesk, also videos and events. In fact, there's another event coming up this Friday. So this is going to be a great one because Dan Rome will take us through how do you use the power of visualization and illustration to make the communication really easy. So this is one of those events that's very Melbourne friendly time as well. So it's going to be on at 10 o'clock this Friday. So the links are on the screen here. So I've got a tiny link. Please register and attend. It's all interesting.
Yeah, and that's it. And so please, yeah, make sure you register for the Dan one, because it's not often that he's doing workshops in our time zone. I've seen him present live and it's really excellent. So highly recommend that, and it's free to join. And yeah, thank you for joining us today and spending the last hour and a half in our interactive workshop/talk.
That was so good. Thanks so much, Fiona and Anna. I have a workshop coming up in the next couple of days, and I'm actually going to use all of this. I'm going to completely steal it all and make it my own, which I hope everybody else is going to do as well. And also we have, speaking of future events that are coming up, I believe that Ladies That UX is also advocating for Future Founders Festival, as you would have seen on our Instagram. So make sure you keep an eye out for that, which is on tomorrow, 15th and 16th. So yeah, tomorrow and the next day. So check that out. And I think that is it from us. Thank you so much for joining us and having a wonderful evening. And I hope you got a lot out of it. Of course, reach out for any questions that you might have. Say hi to us on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the places. And yeah, we'll see you again next time.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Bye.
See ya.